A very good evening to everybody, and welcome to everyone to this very interesting and engaging discussion on the topic post pandemic focus and evolution of molecular diagnostics by Voice of Healthcare. Talking about the topic, we have two very experts from the industry. We have Mr. Praveen Gupta with us. He's the managing director at Premas Life Sciences. Welcome so much, Mr. Praveen, at the
Thank
forum.
you, Gupta.
Joining him would be Dr. Gautam Das, co-founder and managing partner at miBiome Therapeutics. Welcome so much, Dr. Gautam.
Thank you.
Dr. Gautam would also be leading this conversation by the Q&A round. So, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Dr. Gautam. Over to you, and we can start with the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Khushbu, for this opportunity. So as Khushbu started the discussion, this discussion will revolve around post-pandemic focus and evolution of molecular diagnostics and genomics in particular. As you all know, COVID pandemic has launched the need of molecular diagnostics everywhere. And today, dinner table conversations are about real-time PCR and everything. So that is the kind of impact COVID-19 has made to molecular diagnostics and vice versa. So pandemic has dramatically accelerated this growth in molecular diagnostics, and the momentum will surely continue into the post-pandemic phase and in the near and long-term future. The new focus on molecular diagnostics has spurred a lot of innovation, and it is very important for all of us here to keep this pace of innovation in order to be ready to combat any future threat. Hope it doesn't happen again, but we have to be ready to combat any future threats. For this development of better clinical research facilities, and India is now catching up, but really more and more clinical research infrastructure is required with cutting edge globally competitive technologies and skilled manpower. That is very, very important today. India must have skilled manpower in molecular diagnostics, genomics, etc. So I will start with Praveen. So Praveen, what do you think, in your opinion? And I know Premas has significantly contributed to molecular diagnostics and genomics in the pandemic phase. So what do you think is the impact of COVID-19 on molecular diagnostics as such?
Okay. Thanks, Gautam. First of all, great meeting with you. Otherwise, we keep catching up, but it's always good to catch up in a formal way in this, So thanks for this chat. You're absolutely right. I think in terms of molecular diagnostic as a space, COVID has catalyzed the adoption or the importance of molecular diagnostics, which probably took many years in India in terms of establishing the concept that how molecular diagnostic approaches for various diagnostics techniques like real-time PCR, Sanger, NGS. It took a long time for establishing the need, and I think COVID has probably accelerated that in a great sense. So just to give you an example, I think before COVID, there were approximately, I think in India, about 200 odd molecular diagnostic setups. Unofficially, there are figures of about 100,000 pathology labs in the country. Out of that, about 200 labs had some kind of molecular diagnostic, whether it's FISH, PCR, NGS, Sanger. Suddenly, post-COVID, now in just 2 years' time, we have more than 5,000 plus labs which are doing some kind of molecular diagnostics. Not only that, I think the common man now understand what is genome, what is genome sequencing, what is DNA, what is RNA. So all that has really created a massive awareness in terms of common masses, which is the people, clinicians, and also the pathology or the hospital network or the path lab setups on the need and the utility of molecular diagnostics for better diagnosis. Now, my personal assumption is that many of these labs, while COVID numbers will go down, which is great, that means we are mitigating the pandemic right now. Hopefully, all this infrastructure which is built in this time will be repurposed or will be utilized to basically accelerate adoption of molecular approaches towards diagnosis of other pathogens and also non-communicable diseases. So that's where I envisage there will be a lot of adoption. Many people will migrate now from real-time PCR to maybe Sangers or NGS or microarrays or beyond. I think I see a huge future in India now for adoption of molecular diagnostics, just the way globally it is happening.
Thanks, Praveen. So you are at the center of all this at Premas, molecular diagnostics, not just COVID-19, your genomics efforts. And so what do you think top two or three recent advancements in molecular diagnostics, not just COVID, in molecular diagnostics? What has happened in the space?
Okay. So if you talk about globally at this juncture, obviously there are a few areas in which molecular diagnostics, especially utilizing techniques like next generation sequencing and microarrays, I think the areas where there's a massive adoption is in the areas like, for example, rare and undiagnosed disorders. So exome sequencing to do rare and undiagnosed disorders. Now the diagnostic utility or the positive predictive value in terms of finding out and reducing the diagnostic odyssey which was existing. That earlier it used to take about 6-7 years to find out, and a lot of iterative testing to find out what is wrong with a kid with some kind of a phenotype. Today that exome sequencing to find out what is probably going in the at a genetic level, that has accelerated big time. In India too, the numbers are huge, but globally the adoption rate is very high. Secondly, I think oncology space globally, especially now with the advent of liquid biopsies coming up, the screening of cancers or screening of multiple cancers using liquid biopsy, because that's very, very easy compared to doing a biopsy of a tissue. Imagine if you can just draw blood once in a year and do a liquid biopsy to predict either having currently some kind of uh, you know cancer development in the body, or predicting if you are having a predisposition to have cancer in the body. If those tools are easily available at affordable price points, that adoption is also seeing a huge amount of spurt globally. Third thing is NIPT, so non-invasive prenatal testing. In many countries right now, in many countries, it's become like a absolutely standard of care that every pregnancy above certain age is going through NIPT. And in India, the adoption is increasing. Still, I think yes, among the 22 million births or 23 million births in India, we still have only about 100,000 samples getting done on NIPT. But I think the future looks very bright with awareness of clinicians happening. My assumption is that these 2-3 areas will see faster adoption than other things. But it's just not limited to this. I mean, as I said, HLA typing, for example, has a massive conversion from conventional technologies towards NGS. Like this, there are many areas, but these three, if you ask me top three, I think I would say these are top 3-4 areas where I see adoption.
Thanks, Praveen. Very, very important points you brought up on cancer, HLA typing, NIPT, infectious disease, and the whole exome sequencing for inherited disorders. So, one general question, Praveen, like we are talking about post-pandemic, so this question becomes important. Would we be in a world wherein genome surveillance is done like routinely? And for example, we would know about the Wuhan outbreak way ahead of time. Is that a possibility in the near future?
I mean, we all are hoping for that. I hope this experience has taught us the importance of genomic surveillance. I think each country has to realize that now genomic surveillance is not an optional exercise. We can't wait for pandemics to occur to start a surveillance. We have to have a very strong integrated approach, which is continuous. When the numbers are down, for example, right now the COVID numbers are down. This is a time when the surveillance has to increase, because you will have a new variant coming in at this point. When the numbers are high, you typically have a similar type of variant prevailing in a population. It is this time when you're supposed to be increasing the surveillance, and the surveillance has to now. We realize the importance of surveillance in terms of managing COVID and mitigating COVID in terms of developing diagnostic assays, including in case of developing therapeutic assays. All that was possible in a record time because genomic surveillance or genomic information was available to scientists and developers in time. So if we can do this continuously for other pathogens on a routine basis, for example, tuberculosis in India is a massive, massive menace. Can we have a continuous monitoring of tuberculosis on a routine basis to find out the new variants which are coming up, and then how do we contain them, mitigate them, by developing effective diagnostics and therapeutic interventions. So my assumption is that I think this will be a routine thing. One more additional thing is, uh, I think during COVID times, every country or every I think region has developed capacity for genomic surveillance. So if you look at India, for example, almost 60, 70 new centers have come in both private space and in the government space, which have the capacity to tomorrow ramp up and do genomic surveillance for any pathogen. So if government tomorrow creates a mandate, they have the availability of both the, the capital infrastructure and trained manpower in both government and private space to continue this exercise for times to come.
Yeah, you brought a very important point. Tuberculosis. We are in the government level. Government is talking about a TB-free India in very near future, and for that particularly, I think what you said becomes very important. Genome surveillance, drug-resistant surveillance has to be continuous, not just a one-time effort. So, very important point, Praveen. So, are there any challenges or issues that you see? For molecular diagnostics to be adopted? As you said, the numbers increased from, let's say, 200 to 100,000 labs. But India is a big country. I mean, we are 1.3 billion people. So, do you see any challenges or issues that this number is not 100,000, or it should be like tenfold or hundredfold higher?
I mean, absolutely. See, there are challenges, and I think those challenges are common across the globe. It's first to me is the clinicians' awareness. If the clinicians are not aware, or they are maybe fully not aware about the prowess of molecular diagnostics in terms of giving precision medicine or precision, treatment initiatives, tomorrow, if they're aware about the prowess, I think the adoption rate from the clinician will go up. So unless a clinician prescribes to a patient a molecular diagnostic test, the adoption will not go up. So I think the first, I think, mandate for everyone, all of us involved in this business, is that we have to increase the education awareness level at the clinicians level. That's the first part, and I think that's a challenge right now, because I think across the country we have to make it. Maybe main cities, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Chennai, Pune, these are cities, I think people focus on. We have to see how do we get to the tier 2, tier 3 cities in terms of awareness. The moment demand increases, obviously there will be more people who can provide those services. When it comes to the service side, I think there is a challenge about having trained manpower on these techniques. So I think whether it's government, whether it's private setups, we all have a mandate that we have a continuous training exercise done, so that there is manpower coming out which is trained on these technologies, so that when the demand is coming up, we are not falling short in terms of delivery. And when I say trained manpower, it's not just about running these sequences, but analysis of data, making actionable interventions, or suggesting which therapeutic will probably make an effective, utilization in this particular thing. So unless we have a complete end-to-end solution in these areas, and it has to be, work together. Research institutes have to contribute in terms of, creating assays on in molecular diagnostics which are cost effective for the common man to afford it. And I think in that, India will have to maybe look at our challenges and develop solutions based on Indian needs at Indian price points, to be actually pervasive in the population. Otherwise, it will become very esoteric, very expensive. Only few people will be able to access it. The masses will not be the. It will not be truly democratized in the sense for adoption. So unless we take care of price awareness and skill development, we will miss out the potential of molecular diagnostics.
Yeah, interesting point you brought up. That was my next question, actually, Praveen. So, affordable genomics or affordable molecular diagnostics, and India has to work towards that. So, you have already answered that question. I mean, genomics for everyone will require affordable genomics and molecular diagnostics. So, the point you brought up just now, clinician awareness, and we all know it's a problem. So, what would be a suggested solution? Should medical school curriculum involve genomics in a big way, molecular diagnostics in a big way, or what do you think? What can we do?
I think, Gautam, first of all, I think it's not one thing. I think it's a combination of multiple things. First, I think every medical college has to have a curriculum change in terms of having a course on genomics, because unless we have our med school graduates understanding the power which genomics brings in terms of precision medicine, which is where the whole world is moving towards. Tomorrow we are looking at precision medicine in our therapeutic interventions. So if tomorrow that's the way, genomics will play a very important role. So I think first is education at that level. Second is, I think, constantly each one of us, we have different roles. I mean, we are provider for technology, you are providing a service using a latest technology. I think all of us have a cohesive mandate, working with multiple stakeholders to constantly keep organizing those workshops, those CMEs, those awareness campaigns, uh, across the country. And my suggestion is that it should not be limited to only A class cities. It has to go to B and C class cities, because unless it reaches there, we will not see a mass adoption in Ojibwa. So I think that constant investment in education by governments, by medical colleges, but also by service providers like us, has to be more cohesive. I mean, we can always have some nitty-gritties in terms of creating more, I would say, certificate courses, more credits coming on this. Those can be, discussed and can be. But in essence, I think unless each stakeholder invests a large chunk of time and money in terms of educating the clinicians, we will not see that adoption which we expect. It will be sad to see technology being available and not being deployed for patients' benefit. So I think it's a responsibility for all of us to basically go through that.
Great, Praveen. I mean, I must tell the audience of Praveen and Premas' efforts. The road shows that I remember that you guys hold, and the workshops that you hold for college students is really, really inspiring. I mean, Kasturba, we saw a workshop here in Mumbai, and several places like college students getting access. And in our company also, we are doing our best to involve interns from master students. That is the stage where this education we are talking about can happen. So, switching gears a little bit, Praveen, from molecular diagnostics, solutions, research, and challenges, advancements, tools and technologies, education that we talked about. What do you think about the data that is being generated? Like, should there be a common place for sharing the data, government initiatives, private initiatives? Any thoughts? Any you can shed light on that?
Again, I think it's a highly debated, controversial topic, which has been there. But I strongly believe, from a genomics perspective, I think if we need to have a policy, on this. I think genomics data, uh, I think should be done at governments should look at doing it at scale, and making that data available through checks and balances to everyone, to develop a genomic-led economy. You know, Look at UK, for example. They have a Genome England UK program. They've invested billions of dollars into creating that program. But that $1 billion investment today is leading to a 50, $60 billion genomics industry to thrive from UK. If we can do something similar, currently, if the genomic data is fragmented, probably it will not be of much of use. Can we create cohesive strategies of maybe the private and the public genomic data properly, masked with respect to, identity and stuff like this, with proper GDPR guidelines to be followed? If we can keep it in a manner which it can be accessed by our thriving biotech community to work on developing better diagnostic tools, cheaper diagnostic tools, better therapeutic drugs, better vaccines on this data, truly, I think we will use the power of the data which is coming out from our capacity of infrastructure which we have installed. But if you work in silos, probably, if you don't, that's my personal opinion. If you work in silos or in a fragmented fashion, probably nobody will win. It will remain in our own servers, the data, and probably I don't think so. We'll be able to really make a significant impact, which it requires a cohesive effort at this juncture, to see to it that we really develop cost-effective solutions for reaching the Indian masses at current situation. This is the way I believe.
Yeah, very important point, and we are at Voice of Healthcare. I think everybody should listen to this. Genomics-led economy, what Praveen pointed out, should be the way forward. I mean, why not? Economies have been contributed by several sectors, and healthcare is such an important sector. And within that, genomics and molecular diagnostics is such an important sector. So, genomics-led economy, I really like that caption, and I'll use it. We should all work towards building, at least initiating a genomics-led economy, which will take time to develop. Uh, so, Praveen, what's your view? In the beginning, we talked about like innovations not coming out of India. Like everybody talks about what can be done. I mean, India has a lot of potential. So, what can be done towards that?
I think yeah, it's a so. See, the Indians have an innovative bent of mind. There's no doubt about this. I think it's about the culture and the kind of I would say the pace and the culture which is to be set up. So, firstly, I strongly believe that I think India has to up its R&D expenditure, both government and the private space. So, I think I've talked about this in multiple forums to say that India spends less than 1% of its GDP on R&D. Look at China; it's spending about 2.5 to 3% of its GDP on R&D. It's 3x of the GDP. US is spending about 5% of the GDP in R&D, and they say every dollar you spend on R&D gets you $70 to $75 back in long term. So I think that fervor, that mindset, that kind of a culture has to be set in, that where we need to have an ecosystem which is really fostering and basically motivating and incentivizing this culture. I think government is trying to do a lot of things. I'm seeing a lot of incubators getting set up in institutions, so that young entrepreneurs can come and basically thrive on that. I still believe a lot more has to be done in terms of ease of doing that. People who want to take up a space in incubator, people who want to translate their ideas into commercial things, scientists who are working in institutions but have a commercial idea tomorrow to translate. If it can become more easier, if it can become more less bureaucratic, and a culture is fostered there continuously, and it needs certain success stories to come out. The moment we have few success stories coming out of India which are indigenously researched product for global consumption, the moment we have examples like that, I think it will motivate others to take it up, because I don't think so there's a dearth of talent in this country. I think we have the best minds available. It's just that it needs a kickstart. It needs some role models. It needs some uh, ecosystem which is fostering that and incentivizing that. So that's where I believe. I'll give you one more small example. If your first question was about genomic surveillance, if today government of India starts a massive scale genomic surveillance for other pathogens, let's take TB, let's take hepatitis, let's take dengue, chikungunya, or there are umpteen number of problems. If we have, through surveillance, if we have that data which is coming out, imagine today during COVID times, we have a massive industry capacity which has been built up in this country to develop PCR, real-time PCR lamp assays quickly. Imagine tomorrow if that industry or those entrepreneurs have an early access to this genomic data of different pathogens coming out. How fast they can develop diagnostics and therapeutic assays tomorrow, which are for global consumption. Automatically it boosts a sentiment of the biotech community, and so that it shouldn't happen that okay, COVID is getting now mitigated and they don't have anything else to do. So that will
Yeah.
be demotivating. So can we create a constant mechanism where that data which is coming out on a continuous basis, and there are early access entrepreneurs who can use the data, scientists who can use the data and create solutions, which is also for the Indian market, but also looking at the global consumptions. I think that kind of a culture, if we can set it up, my guess is I think we'll have a huge amount of boost to our R&D initiatives.
Great, Praveen. I mean, we have potential, we have great talent, we will build a culture. A related question, you think investment is a bottleneck, private or government?
So, it's improving. See, if you see the healthcare investment which is coming up into, of course, you're right. That risky investments. R&D is a risky bet. I mean, it is not a very safe kind of investment, and I think we require those risks to be taken. Has it become better than yesterday? Yes, it has. Healthcare investments are better, but is it the way it is in US or in other countries? I think we are far, far away from that. So I think, again, I'm saying we need to have some success stories coming out in which indigenous development of products and services, which are for global consumption. If we can create those examples, the the belief from the investor community in India or Indian companies will become higher. And I think
Yeah,
it's a chain reaction. It's again a, to me, I think that's the cascade effect which happens. And then tomorrow, if we have stories like this, automatically I think investment starts flowing in. Uh, any which way, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you must be seeing that. Every day you hear a news that various pharma companies are trying to come into diagnostic space now because IVD has suddenly become very attractive. It's a high margin industry per se. So people are trying to come into that. So there is an appetite for expanding into healthcare further. Many non-healthcare companies are trying to come into healthcare. There are so many companies now, which is a good, again it's a good bet. But if we can develop solutions tomorrow which are research based on data coming out from Indian samples or Indian, because again we have an advantage because unfortunately there's a large population, there's a large diversity, and hence there's a large sample pool for every disease available. Can we use that to our advantage to create data based on which we can discover, and once we discover and make products here and tomorrow make them globally successful? I think we have a story, which is too easily, which we can sell it to any investor community to basically invest more.
great, Praveen. These are very, very important, insightful points. And in the interest of time, I would ask you the last question. In your opinion, what is the future of molecular diagnostics and genomics? One, two, three, whatever way you want to answer.
Huh. So, you know, molecular diagnostic is now. I mean, it's already proving its efficacy now. So to me, I think it's no more a futuristic thing which is looking like it will come. It is already arrived. I mean, molecular diagnostic is arrived. Within molecular diagnostic, there are approaches like next generation sequencing, which is really bringing a lot of value. I mean, in terms of the dream of getting precision medicine really, really initiated at a global level. So if I have to have a crystal ball gazing and saying, that where I think, so I see few areas which will ultimately, once we have proper solutions, things like pharmacogenomics, as basic as pharmacogenomics. If we can create a baseline data in the country to say which drugs will respond to people, which drugs will not respond to people, uh, I think that pharmacogenomic um, application, if we can establish, I see a great utility tomorrow in the clinical space. That where imagine a world, I mean, in India, where along with our Aadhaar card, we have our entire pharmacogenomic information encoded there. I go to a clinician, the clinician before prescribing me a drug cannot see my data, but can log into a server and say, okay, can I give Praveen this antibiotic? And he knows that this antibiotic or this drug will respond to Praveen. It will not be there will be no adverse drug reaction occurring. So this is one thing which I emphasize, that if we can show the utility in India and do a cohesive education, this could be a massive, uptake. Second area is, of course, things like NIPT testing. I think because there's a clear utility of using non-invasive prenatal testing into expecting mothers, to basically make a difference in terms of having healthy babies, which are, and it's a huge burden, which is going on from our genetic disorders, especially from aneuploidies and stuff like that. Third area which you are specializing into, is microbiome. I strongly believe that microbiome, apart from genes and environment, the microbiome plays a very important aspect. And I think as more and more discoveries are occurring and the utility of microbiome is getting established, I see that microbiome will come into mainframe where um, it will be a test of choice. It will be people would like to know what's their microbiome. And the beauty is that tomorrow, once we know that, the interventions are possible. We can tomorrow create probiotics which are customized based on each need, to help as an intervention. So I think, and dietary changes can be always tomorrow, advice. So I see that. I mean, oncology, of course, there will be a massive spurt which will be coming. But I see that these 3-4 areas have larger scope of adoption in molecular diagnostics.
Great, great, Praveen. Another important point for the audience: pharmacogenomic marker in your health identity or health Aadhaar card. I mean, that's the future. So, with this, I think there's a Q&A.
Sure.
Is Khushbu there? Or?
Yeah, hi, Dr. Gautam. We do have a question which says that any plan for NGS kit manufacture in India? I hope it will help to provide affordable NGS kit. That is one question. Otherwise, I think there are just general comments. So maybe if you wish to address that question, we can.
Yeah, Khushbu, thanks. From my side, Gautam can answer this part. I mean, absolutely, there's a huge interest from Premas, the company which I'm part of. We have a huge interest in developing low cost and relevant Indian NGS panels based on good research data. So we are collaborating with some of the leading research institutes across the country, whether it's IGIB, whether it's AIMS, whether it's many other multiple institutes. And we are looking at tomorrow scientifically validated low-cost NGS panels in both communicable and non-communicable areas to be developed for the Indian appetite at affordable price points. So absolutely, we are heavily focusing on this.
Yeah, thanks, Praveen. I think this is very important. And in our company also, we are focusing on, as you said, research-based NGS panels, which will be affordable. I'm very confident. I'm optimistic that there will be panels that will be made out of India, NGS panels, because when we collate all the Indian data, there would be some signatures which are specific to Indian population. So we don't need to study everything, rather study that. And we are already making, like for our example, our microbiome test that you pointed out is 5,000 rupees. So, I mean, earlier all microbiome tests globally was nothing less than 8 to 10,000 rupees. So this is where the future is going, and I'm confident, I'm optimistic that we will make low cost panels. Some of our panels on tuberculosis, cancer, cholesterol panels are becoming cheaper and cheaper, and these are research driven. So first phase is generating a lot of data, enroll a lot of patients, generate data, whether it is relevant, whether a mutation is relevant for India. First, we have to look at that, and then make panels, design panels which are cost effective. So I think we have answered this. I think Praveen, I think the question was more of kits. If you can answer, like, are there manufacturing companies making, for example, Illumina, making kits in India to make it cheap?
So the idea is that Illumina is trying to is very proactively trying to look at creating partnerships in India. For again, the same idea is that we have diagnostic manufacturers. There's so many kit manufacturers who are manufacturing PCR, real-time PCR, ELISA kit manufacturing. So the manufacturing capacity is available. Can we educate and can we partner with them tomorrow to develop solutions on NGS? So there are already discussions going on. Some are already in the public domain. Some are going on. I'm not at the liberty of right now talking about them. But I can certainly say that there's a lot of interest from the Indian diagnostic kit manufacturers. My only advice here is, as both Gautam and I alluded earlier, it has to be research based. So I think there's a very strong element that we should be collaborating with some of the best academic research institutes to look at data which is coming out from large scale studies, properly validated, and adopting those either markers or techniques to make it scientifically tenable, and of course at a price cost effective price points on latest technologies like Illumina's NGS machines or other NGS machines or real-time PCRs. That can be done, I think effectively. I think there's a huge scope in India.
Thanks, Praveen. Anything, Khushbu?
No, I think we don't have any other question. It's just general comments. So I think with that we wrap up the session today. And any concluding remarks by both of you all, and then probably we can mark the end of the session. Thanks.
Praveen, you want to go first?
Okay, so my concluding remarks, and I think I've been telling this for quite some time. I strongly envisage right now that next generation sequencing is going to make a huge impact in the precision medicine initiatives globally. The estimates are that in next 5 years, the adoption rate of NGS will be approximately 5x of today. So, as per the current estimate, there are about 20 to 25,000 total NGS users across the globe. And it's predicted that in next 5 years' time, it will become about 100,000 users. Now, imagine, Gautam, that if tomorrow there are 100,000 users globally for NGS are going to be coming up, what is the amount of skilled manpower required to basically run these machines or analyze the data? So, can India, just like the way we took advantage of IT and our natural strength, and we created an IT economy, same way, can India tomorrow use this opportunity to create massive scale training, to create a manpower which is trained on these technologies, and they get globally employable. They're helping our employment cause, and we're also building up a genome informatics economy or genome economy, and utilizing the data. We can take lead in this. This is our movement. I would say this is a point where we can take lead, and I hope we can all collectively contribute towards that.
Yeah, great, Praveen. Definitely. I mean, we should not miss this bus of what IT was for India. Genomics can be much, much way further because it is healthcare, and healthcare, the applications are immense. My concluding remarks would be that genomics, to be affordable, to be reachable to everyone, has to be faster, cheaper, better, as we call it. And in this, towards this end, I myself and our company, we are building a community which is called Genomics for All. And I urge Voice of Healthcare and everyone, Premas, and everyone to be a part of this. And this community, the primary goal is to actually make it possible. Like, genomics should be not just for clinician or researcher, but even a remote person, agriculturist should make utilization of the advanced genomics tools. So that's something that I would like to conclude, that genomics should be and must be for everyone. Thanks, Kushbu. Thanks, Praveen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gautam. Thank you, Mr. Praveen, as well, for being here and for this amazing, interesting discussion. And thank you to our viewers for joining us for this discussion.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you, Kushbu.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.